The dragon's wings cut through the thin air as Nara pressed her face against Beak's warm scales. Below them, Earth hung like a broken jewel against the black sky. She had dreamed of this moment for months, but now that it was here, fear twisted in her stomach like a cold snake. "Easy, Beak," she whispered, running her hand along the dragon's neck. The great beast rumbled deep in his chest, a sound that always calmed her nerves. They had been flying for 3 days straight from the moon colony, and both were tired, but they couldn't stop now. Not when people were counting on them. The radio on her belt crackled with static. "Nara, this is Moonbase. Do you copy?" The voice of Commander Park reached her through the speaker. She grabbed the radio. "I copy, Commander. We're starting our descent now. Remember, stay alert. We lost contact with Earth 6 months ago. We don't know what you'll find down there." Nara nodded even though he couldn't see her. "Understood. I'll send word as soon as I can." As they dropped lower, the Earth grew larger and stranger. Where she expected to see the familiar brown and green patches of land, there were weird blue and purple colors spreading across the continents. Crystal-like towers reached up from the cities, catching the sunlight and throwing it back in rainbow patterns. "What happened here, Beak?" she asked softly. The dragon snorted, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. He felt uneasy too. Dragons were smart creatures, and Beak had always been good at sensing danger. Nara pulled up the old maps on her tablet. According to the GPS, they were flying over what used to be Seoul, the capital of South Korea. Her grandmother had been born there before the great move to the moon colonies 50 years ago. She had always wanted to see it with her own eyes, but this wasn't the Seoul from the old pictures. The buildings below pulsed with soft light, like they were alive. Strange vines covered the streets, but they weren't green like normal plants. They glowed with blue and silver light that moved through them like flowing water. "Find us a place to land, boy," she told Beak. The dragon banked left, his massive wings casting shadows on the transformed city below. He circled twice before finding a clear space that looked like it had once been a park. Now it was covered with what looked like crystal grass that bent and swayed without any wind. Beak landed with surprising gentleness for such a large creature. His claws made soft clicking sounds on the crystal surface. Nara slid down from the saddle, her boots touching alien ground for the first time in her life. The air was warm and sweet, nothing like the recycled atmosphere of the moonbase. She took a deep breath and tasted flowers and something else she couldn't name. It was almost like honey, but sharper. She pulled out her scanner and switched it on. The device beeped as it searched for human life signs. The screen showed dozens of contacts moving through the nearby buildings, but something was wrong with the readings. The shapes on the screen were too tall, too thin to be normal humans. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing strangely in the quiet city. "Is anyone there? I'm from the moon colony. We're here to help." For a moment there was only silence. Then she heard footsteps, but they sounded different from human footsteps. They were lighter, almost like dancing. Beak raised his head and growled low in his throat. His scales rippled with tension and his tail swept from side to side. Something was coming. The first figure appeared from behind a building that looked like it was made of living coral. Nara's breath caught in her throat. It walked on 2 legs like a human, but that was where the similarity ended. The creature was tall and thin, with arms that seemed too long for its body. Where human skin should be, there was something that looked like glass filled with flowing light. Its head was the most shocking part. Instead of eyes, nose, and mouth arranged like a human face, there were large, many-sided eyes that caught the light like diamonds. When it opened what might have been its mouth, Nara could see that it was filled with the same flowing light that moved through its body. More figures appeared from other buildings. They all had the same strange, beautiful appearance. They moved with smooth, flowing motions that reminded Nara of dancers or swimmers moving through water. One of them stepped forward. When it spoke, the voice was musical but somehow familiar. "Nara," it said in perfect Turian, "we have been waiting for you." She stepped back, bumping into Beak's warm side. The dragon's growl grew louder, and she could feel the heat building. in his throat as he prepared to breathe fire. "How do you know my name?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The creature tilted its head in a gesture that seemed almost human. "Because I knew you before you were born. I held you when you were a baby. I taught you how to ride your first dragon." Nara's heart stopped. The voice, despite its strange new music, was one she knew better than any other. "Grandmother?" she whispered. The creature that had once been her grandmother nodded slowly. "Yes, child, though I am much more than I was before." Nara looked around at the other figures. Now that she knew what to look for, she could see familiar things in their movements and postures. The way one stood with his hands behind his back. The way another kept brushing at her hair, even though she no longer had hair as humans understood it. "What happened to you?" Nara asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Her transformed grandmother stepped closer, the light flowing through. Her body pulsed gently, like a slow heartbeat. "We evolved, dear one. We became what we were always meant to be. But you're not human anymore." "No," the creature that had been her grandmother said. "We are something much better." Beak's growl became a roar, and flames licked at the edges of his mouth. The transformed beings stepped back, but they didn't seem afraid. They watched the dragon with what might have been curiosity. Nara put her hand on Beak's neck to calm him, but inside she felt the same wild panic that drove her dragons. Rage. She had come to save these people, to bring them back to the safety of the moon colonies. Instead, she had found something that challenged everything she thought she knew about what it meant to be human. The transformed beings waited patiently as she struggled with her thoughts. Their strange, beautiful faces were impossible to read, but something in their stillness reminded her of the way her grandmother used to wait when Nara was thinking through a difficult problem. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why did you choose this?" Her grandmother's form shimmered, and for just a moment, Nara thought she could see the old woman's familiar face in the flowing light. "Because the old way was killing us," came the musical reply. "And this way we can live forever." Nara stared at the creature that claimed to be her grandmother. The flowing lights under its glass-like skin pulsed in patterns that seemed almost like words she couldn't read. She wanted to run, to climb back onto Beak and fly away from this nightmare. But something kept her feet planted on the crystal ground. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "Grandmother, what did they do to you?" Before the transformed being could answer, another figure stepped forward from the group. This one was taller than the others, with broader shoulders that reminded Nara of someone she once knew. When it spoke, the voice carried the same musical quality but with deeper tones. "Nara, my name is Dongyun. I worked with your father at the Genesis Labs before you were born." She remembered that name. Her father had talked about Dongyun many times. He was a scientist who had helped design the dragon breeding program on the moon. A man who loved to laugh and always brought her candy when she was little. "Uncle Dongyun?" she whispered. The transformed being nodded. "Yes, though I am no longer the man you remember. I'm something new, something better." Beak shifted behind her, his claws scraping against the crystal surface. The dragon's eyes never left the group of transformed humans. His instincts told him these things were dangerous, even if they had once been family. "Sit with us," Dongyun said, gesturing to a spot where the crystal grass had grown into something like chairs. "Let us explain what happened here." Nara looked back at Beak. The dragon's expression seemed to say he thought this was a bad idea. But she needed answers. She needed to understand what had happened to her world. She sat down carefully on the crystal chair. It was surprisingly comfortable, adjusting to her body like it was alive. The transformed beings arranged themselves in a circle around her, their glowing forms beautiful and terrible in the strange light of the city. "6 months ago," Dongyun began, "we discovered something buried deep under the ocean. Ancient ruins that had been hidden for millions of years. Inside we found what we came to call the evolution chambers." The creature that had been her grandmother leaned forward. "They were left by a race called the Ethereals. Beings who had mastered the art of transformation, of becoming more than their original forms." Nara frowned. "But why would they leave them here?" "As a gift," Dongyun said. The ethereals had watched many species grow and die across the galaxy. They left these chambers on worlds where intelligent life might someday emerge. When a species reached the right level of development, they could choose to evolve beyond their biological limits. And you chose to use them? Her grandmother's form shimmered. Child, you must understand what Earth had become. The pollution was choking our skies. The oceans were dying. Wars raged across every continent. Millions of people were starving while others lived in luxury. We were destroying ourselves and our world. Dongyun nodded. The old human form was too limited. We were trapped by our biology, our need for food and water and air. We could only live for a few decades before our bodies failed us. We were violent and selfish because evolution had made us that way. But the transformation changed all of that, another voice said. Nara turned to see a figure she didn't recognize, but who spoke with the authority of a leader. I am Kyungmin. I was a general in the old world, but now I serve as a coordinator for our new society. Nara remembered hearing about General Kyungmin from the news broadcasts. He had been famous for ending the last war between the Asian countries, a man known for his wisdom and fairness. The chambers gave us new bodies, Kim Min continued. Bodies that don't age or get sick. Bodies that can reshape matter with thought alone. We no longer need to eat or sleep or breathe. We are free from all the weaknesses that made humans suffer. But you're not human anymore, Nara said. No, her grandmother said gently. We are what humans were meant to become. Dongyun raised his hand and the air around his fingers began to glow. Slowly, the light formed into the shape of a flower, perfect in every detail. Then it became a butterfly, its wings moving as if it were alive. Finally, it dissolved back into pure light. We can create anything we can imagine, he said. We can heal the sick, feed the hungry, and end all suffering. Look around you, Nara. Look at what we have built. For the first time, Nara really looked at the transformed city. The buildings weren't just covered in strange plants. They were growing, changing, improving themselves. The air was clean and sweet. There were no cars or machines because the transformed beings didn't need them. They could travel by thought alone. Where are the people who didn't transform? She asked. The circle of beings became very still. Their flowing lights dimmed slightly. Most chose to evolve, Kyungmin said carefully. The benefits were clear to anyone with wisdom, but some didn't. A few, her grandmother admitted. They were afraid. They clung to their old limited forms. We gave them safe places to live while they considered their choice. Something in the way she said it made Nara's stomach twist. Are they still alive? Of course, Dongyun said quickly. We would never harm them. We are beyond such primitive behaviors as violence. But Nara noticed he didn't actually answer her question. I want to see them, she said. The transformed beings looked at each other. Their lights pulsed in patterns. That seemed like communication, though Nara couldn't understand what they were saying. That would not be wise, Kyungmin said finally. They are unstable. The old human emotions make them unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. Dangerous how? They still feel anger and fear and jealousy, her grandmother explained. These emotions cloud their judgment. Sometimes they try to sabotage our work or hurt themselves. It is very sad to watch. Nara stood up suddenly. The crystal chair tried to hold her, but she pulled free with more force than she meant to use. I want to see them. I want to talk to them. Her grandmother said, rising as well. You must understand, you are the last link to our old lives. When you see what we have become, you will want to join us. You will want to leave behind the pain and confusion of human existence. And if I don't? The circle of transformed beings became very quiet. Their lights stopped pulsing, and for a moment they looked like statues made of living glass. Everyone chooses evolution eventually, Kyungmin said. It is inevitable. The old form is too limited to survive in the new world we are building. Beak's roar split the air. The dragon had been growing more agitated during the conversation, and now his patience was at an end. Flames poured from his mouth, turning the crystal grass around him black. The transformed beings stepped back, but they didn't seem afraid. They watched the dragon with the same curiosity they might show for an interesting insect. Your dragon still has the old instincts, Don Yoon observed. He senses that change is coming and fights against it. But even he could evolve if given the chance. Stay away from him, Nara said, moving to stand between Beak and the transformed beings. Her grandmother's form shimmered with what might have been sadness. Oh, child. You are so much like your father was, so protective of the old ways, so afraid of becoming something greater. My father never had the chance to choose, Nara said. He died in the mining accident when I was 12. But if he had lived, he would have seen the wisdom in transformation. He would have wanted this for you. Nara climbed onto Beak's back. The dragon's scales were warm against her legs, and she could feel his heart beating fast with anger and fear. I need time to think, she said. Of course, Hyungmin said. But do not take too long. The old world is ending, and we cannot protect you from that change forever. As Beak spread his wings and lifted them into the air, Nara looked down at the transformed beings. They stood in their perfect circle, their lights pulsing in harmony. They looked peaceful and wise and completely alien, but as they flew away, she could swear she heard something that sounded like crying carried on the wind. Beak flew in wide circles above the transformed city. Nara could feel the dragon's confusion through their bond. He understood that the glowing beings below had once been human, but his simple mind couldn't grasp how such a thing was possible. No, boy, she whispered, patting his neck. It doesn't make sense to me either. She guided him toward a tall crystal tower that looked like it might have been a hotel once. The building had balconies that jutted out like branches from a tree. Beak landed on one that seemed strong enough to hold his weight. Nara slid down from the saddle and walked to the edge of the balcony. The city spread out below them, beautiful and strange. Streams of light flowed through the streets like rivers of liquid stars. Flying creatures that might once have been birds soared between the buildings, their bodies trailing rainbow colors. It was perfect. Too perfect. Her radio crackled. Nara, this is Moonbase. Report your status. She grabbed the device. I'm alive. Commander, but things are not what we expected. What did you find? Are there survivors? Nara hesitated. How could she explain what she had seen? The humans are still here, but they've been changed. Transformed into something else. Static filled the channel for a moment. Transformed how? I don't know how to describe it. They look like they're made of light and glass. They can create things just by thinking about them. They say they've evolved beyond human limitations. Are they hostile? No, at least I don't think so. But Commander, they want me to transform too. They say it's inevitable. Get out of there, Nara. Come home immediately. Before she could answer, a new voice came through the radio. But this voice wasn't coming from the speaker. It was coming from behind her. She cannot leave yet. There's too much for her to understand. Nara spun around. Standing on the balcony was another transformed being, but this one was different from the others. Where the others had been tall and thin, this one was smaller, more compact. The light flowing through its body pulsed in patterns that seemed somehow familiar. Who are you? Nara asked, backing toward Beak. I am Miran. I was the lead scientist who first opened the evolution chambers. Nara's breath caught. Miran had been her mother's name, but her mother had died when she was born. At least, that's what her father had always told her. That's impossible. Nara said, My mother died years ago. The transformed being stepped closer. Its many-sided eyes caught the light like diamonds, but there was something in them that reminded Nara of the old photographs her father had kept. I did die, in a way. The woman I was before the transformation is gone, but her memories live on. In me, and her love for you burns brighter than ever. You're not my mother. My mother was human. I was human once. I loved a man named Jinho, and together we created you. But when the complications during your birth threatened to kill me, I was brought to the chambers. The transformation saved my life, but it changed me into something your father could not accept. Nara felt tears burning her eyes. Father told me you died. To him I did. He could not love what I had become. So I let him take you to the moon colonies while I worked here on Earth to prepare for humanity's next step. Miran moved closer, and Nara could see her own features reflected in the flowing light of the being's face. The shape of the eyes, the curve of the mouth, even the way she held her head when she was thinking. "Why didn't you tell me?" Nara whispered. "Because I hoped you would never need to know. I hoped humanity would evolve peacefully, without conflict. But some of the unchanged humans have been causing problems. They refuse to see the benefits of transformation. They spread fear and doubt among those who might otherwise choose to evolve." Beak growled low in his throat. The dragon didn't trust this new arrival any more than he had trusted the others. "Where are they?" Nara asked. "The ones who didn't transform?" Miran's light flickered. "Hidden, scattered, living like animals in the ruins of the old world. They attack our construction sites and try to destroy the chambers. They would rather see humanity die than see it evolve. I want to meet them. Why?" "They will only fill your head with lies and fear. Because I need to hear both sides before I make my choice." Miran was quiet for a long moment. Her lights pulsed in slow, steady rhythms. "You sound like your father. He always said that people should make their own decisions with all the facts. Then you'll take me to them? I will do something better. I will show you what their choice has cost them." Miran raised her hand, and the air between them began to shimmer. Slowly, images formed in the space above the balcony. Nara watched in amazement as scenes played out like a movie made of light. She saw groups of unchanged humans living in underground tunnels. They looked sick and tired. Their clothes were torn and dirty. Their faces were thin from hunger. Some of them coughed constantly, and others limped from untreated injuries. "This is what humanity looks like without evolution," Miran said sadly. "They refuse our offers of help. They would rather suffer than change." The images shifted, showing the underground humans attacking a construction site where transformed beings were building something that looked like a garden. The unchanged humans threw rocks and burned the crystal plants. The transformed beings didn't fight back, but their lights dimmed with what might have been sadness. "They destroy everything we try to create for them," Miran continued. "They are trapped by their old instincts of fear and violence." But as Nara watched, she noticed something else. The unchanged humans worked together to help their wounded. A woman shared her food with a hungry child who wasn't even her own. A man risked his life to save another from a cave-in. "They still care about each other," Nara said. "Yes, but that caring causes them pain. When one of them dies, the others suffer. When they disagree, they fight. When they love, they also know loss. Is that really better than peace?" Nara thought about her life on the moon colony. She remembered the day her dragon master had died in an accident. The grief had nearly destroyed her. But she also remembered the joy of Beak's first flight, the excitement of learning new things, the warmth of friendship and laughter. "Maybe pain and joy can't exist without each other," she said. Miran's lights pulsed faster. "That is old thinking, child. We have found a way to have meaning without suffering." "But do you still dream?" The question seemed to catch Miran off guard. Her lights flickered uncertainly. "We do not need dreams. We have purpose." "That's not the same thing." Beak suddenly lifted his head and roared. His warning call echoed across the city. In the distance, Nara could see other transformed beings rising into the air, moving toward their location. "They are coming," Miran said. "The council has decided it is time for you to choose." "And if I choose to stay human?" Miran's form seemed to grow larger, more imposing. "Then you will share the fate of all unchanged humans. You will age and die while we build a perfect world. Your dragon will grow old and weak while we soar on wings of pure thought. You're threatening me. I am offering you paradise. But paradise cannot exist with chaos. The old human nature is chaos. It must be left behind." More transformed beings landed on the balcony. Nara recognized her grandmother and Dongyun among them. But there were others too, beings whose forms pulsed with different colors and patterns. It is time, said a voice that might have been Kyungmin. The choice can be delayed no longer. Nara looked at the circle of transformed beings surrounding her. They were beautiful and terrible and completely alien. Then she looked at Beak, whose dragon eyes burned with loyalty and wild freedom. I need to see the unchanged humans first. She said, I need to hear their side of the story. That is not possible, Kyungmin said. They would corrupt your thinking with their fear and hatred. Then I guess I've already made my choice. Beak spread his wings and roared again. This time, flames poured from his mouth, forcing the transformed beings to step back. In that moment of confusion, Nara leaped onto his back. Wait, Miran called out. You are making a mistake that will cost you everything. But Beak was already launching himself from the balcony. As they flew away from the crystal tower, Nara could hear her transformed mother calling her name. The sound was beautiful and heartbreaking and filled with a sadness that seemed very human indeed. Below them, the perfect city pulsed with angry light. The choice had been offered and refused. Now there would be consequences. Beak flew low over the ruins of what had once been the old part of Seoul. Here, the crystal growths were thinner, and patches of normal concrete and steel still showed through. Nara guided him toward a broken subway entrance that her scanner showed was clear of the transformed beings. Down there, boy, she whispered. The dragon landed softly beside a pile of rubble. Nara slid from his back and pulled out a flashlight. The entrance to the subway was dark and smelled like dust and old. Water, hello? She called softly. Is anyone down there? I'm human. I'm here to help. For a moment, there was only silence. Then she heard the sound of footsteps running away from her voice. Wait, she called louder. Please, I'm from the moon colony. I'm not one of them. A voice came from the darkness, speaking in Korean, but with an accent she didn't recognize. Prove it. How? Tell me something only a real human would know. Something the light people can't understand. Nara thought for a moment. I'm scared. I'm scared and confused, and I don't know what to do. I miss my father, and I'm angry that my mother lied to me my whole life. I want to help people, but I don't know if I'm strong enough. There was silence. Then a different voice, this one belonging to a woman, said, That sounds human enough. Come down, but leave your dragon up there. These tunnels aren't big enough. For him, Nara looked at Beak. The dragon's eyes glowed in the darkness, and she could feel his worry through their bond. Stay here, she told him. If I'm not back in an hour, fly to the moon and tell them what happened. Beak rumbled deep in his chest, but settled down to wait. Nara climbed down into the subway tunnel. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, showing old advertisements and broken tiles. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. Keep walking straight, the woman's voice called. Don't turn left or right. There are traps. Nara followed the instructions, her heart beating fast. After what felt like a long time, she saw a faint glow ahead. As she got closer, she realized it was candlelight coming from what looked like a small camp set up on the old subway platform. A woman stepped into the light. She was thin and dirty, with short black hair and tired eyes. But she was completely, unmistakably human. I'm Hiren, the woman said. I used to be an engineer before the world ended. Who are you? Nara. I came from the moon colony to help. Hiren laughed, but there was no humor in it. Help, child? There's no help for us. Not unless you brought an army with you. I brought my dragon, one dragon against an entire transformed world. You're braver than you are smart. Other figures stepped out of the shadows. Men and women of different ages, all of them looking tired and hungry. But they were human, and after seeing the transformed beings, that felt like a miracle. How many of you are there? Nara asked. Here, maybe 50, Hiren said. Scattered across the city and the world? Who knows? Maybe a few thousand. Maybe. Less, the transformed beings said most humans chose to evolve. They're not lying about that, said an older man who introduced himself as Jang-hun. When the chambers first opened, maybe 70% of people went willingly. They were promised eternal life, perfect health, and unlimited power, but you didn't. Some of us were suspicious, Hiram said. The transformation was irreversible. Once you went in, you never came out the same. We wanted to study it first, understand what we were giving up. And what did you find? Hiram led her to a table covered with papers and old computer equipment. We found that the ethereals weren't as generous as they seemed. The transformation doesn't just change your body. It changes your mind, your soul, everything that makes you human. She pulled out a thick folder. These are brain scans from before. And after transformation, look at this. Nara studied the images. Even without medical training, she could see the differences. The transformed brains had patterns that looked almost like computer circuits. They're not individuals anymore, Hiram explained. They're parts of a collective consciousness. They think they're making their own choices, but really they're all following the same program. But they seemed so individual when I talked to them, did they? Or did they all want the same thing? Did any of them disagree with each other about anything important? Nara thought back to her conversations with the transformed beings. They had all supported the transformation. They had all believed it was inevitable. None of them had questioned whether it was right. The ethereals were dying, Jong-hun said. Their species was ending, but they found a way to live on by taking over other species. The transformation doesn't create new evolved humans. It creates new ethereals wearing human memories. That's why they need everyone to transform, Hiram added. The collective gets stronger with each new member. And if there are unchanged humans around, the transformed ones might start to remember what they lost. Is that why they keep you hidden? Hidden and contained. They don't kill us because that would prove they're not as peaceful as they claim. But they make sure we can't interfere with their plans. Nara looked around the small camp. These people were living like refugees in their own world. But despite their hardships, they still laughed and argued and cared for each other. They were still human in all the messy, complicated ways that mattered. There has to be a way to reverse the transformation, she said. Hiram's eyes lit up. Actually, there might be. We've been working on something, but we need help. The transformation chambers can be modified, but we need access to one of the main sites. Where? The original site where they first found the ethereal ruins? It's under the ocean, heavily guarded by the transformed. We'd need a distraction, something to draw them away. What kind of distraction? Before Hiram could answer, alarms started ringing throughout the tunnel. Emergency lights flickered on, casting red shadows on the walls. They found us, Jong-hun said grimly. Through the tunnel came the sound of footsteps, but not human ones. The light, dancing steps of the transformed beings. How? Nara asked. Your dragon, Hiram said. They must have been tracking him. The sound of footsteps grew closer. With them came a soft, musical humming that seemed to fill the air. There's another way out, Hiram said, grabbing a backpack filled with papers and equipment. But we have to move now. The humans scattered through the tunnels like frightened mice. Nara followed Hiram through a maze of passages and maintenance tunnels. Behind them, the humming grew louder. Where are we going? Nara asked as they climbed a ladder toward the surface. To find your dragon, Hiram said, and then to start a war. They emerged from a storm drain several blocks from where Nara had left Beak. The dragon was waiting, his eyes glowing with anger. Around him, the crystal growths had grown thicker, like the city itself was trying to trap him. They're coming, Nara told him as she climbed onto his back. Hiram grabbed the dragon's leg. Take me with you. I know where the main site is. The others? They have their own escape routes? This isn't the first time we've been found. As Beak lifted off, Nara looked down to see transformed beings pouring out of every building and tunnel. Entrance, their lights pulsed in angry patterns and their humming had become a roar. They're not happy, Hiram shouted over the wind. Good, Nara replied. Maybe that means they're still human enough to feel something real. But as they flew away from the city, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had just started something. That would end with everyone she cared about being destroyed. Beak flew through the night sky toward the coordinates Hiram had given them. Below, the ocean stretched like black glass, broken only by the lights of transformed cities built on floating islands. There, Hiram said, pointing to a spot where the water glowed with deep blue light. The original site. That's where it all began. As they got closer, Nara could see a massive structure rising from the ocean floor. It looked like a crystal mountain turned upside down, its point disappearing into the depths while its wide base broke the surface. Streams of light flowed up its sides like waterfalls running backward. "How are we supposed to get in there?" Nara asked. "There must be hundreds of transformed beings guarding it." "That's where your dragon comes in," Hiram said with a grim smile. "Dragons are chaos made flesh. The transformed minds can't predict what he'll do because he doesn't think like they do. He thinks with instinct and emotion." Beak roared as if he understood, and flames poured from his mouth. The fire reflected off the water, turning the waves. "Orange and gold, what's the plan?" "We get inside and find the master control chamber. If we can modify the original transformation program, we might be able to reverse what's been done. Or at least stop it from spreading." "Might?" "I'm an engineer, not a miracle worker, but it's the only chance we have." As they approached the structure, transformed beings began rising from the water around them. They moved through the air without wings, their bodies trailing light like falling stars. Soon, Beak was surrounded by dozens of them. One flew close enough to speak. Nara recognized the voice of Kingman. "Land now, and no harm will come to you. Continue this path, and we will be forced to stop you." "Stop us how?" Nara shouted back. "You said you don't believe in violence." "We don't, but we will defend ourselves." The transformed beings began to glow brighter. The light hurt Nara's eyes, and she could feel heat building in the air around. The Beak roared in pain and anger. "They're using concentrated light as a weapon," Hiram said. "It won't kill us, but it will blind and burn us. Then we better move fast." Nara urged Beak into a steep dive toward the crystal structure. The dragon folded his wings and dropped like a stone. The transformed beings followed, but Beak's chaotic flight pattern made it hard for them to predict where he would go next. They crashed through the structure's outer wall in a shower of crystal fragments. Beak's claws found purchase on the smooth surfaces, and he scrambled deeper into the building. "This way," Hiram said, consulting a device that looked like a compass made of metal and light. "The control chamber should be at the center." They ran through corridors that pulsed with the same flowing light Nara had seen in the transformed beings. The walls seemed alive, shifting and changing as they passed. "Stop!" The voice came from ahead of them. Miran stood in the corridor, her form brighter and more solid than Nara had ever seen it. "Mother," Nara said softly. "I was hoping you would come here," Miran said. "It saves me from having to find you." "You were waiting for us?" "I was waiting for you to realize the truth. That your dragon is more than just an animal, he's a key." Beak growled low in his throat. His scales rippled with colors that matched the flowing lights in the walls. "A key to what?" "To understanding what we've really become," Miran said. "The transformation was supposed to make us perfect. But perfection is static. It doesn't grow or change or create new things." She stepped closer, and Nara could see something different in her mother's form. The lights under her skin flickered and jumped instead of flowing smoothly. "Your dragon carries the chaos of true life," Miran continued. "When he's near us, we remember what we lost. We remember dreams and laughter and the messy beauty of being human. Then you'll help us reverse." "The transformation?" "I can't. The collective won't let me. But I can help you reach the control chamber. After that, the choice will be yours." Hiram stepped forward. "Why should we trust you?" "You're one of them." "Because I love my daughter more than I love perfection." Miran said, "And love is the most human thing of all." She led them deeper into the structure. As they walked, more transformed beings appeared in the corridors, but they didn't try to stop them. They watched with expressions that seemed confused and longing. "They're fighting the collective programming," Miran explained. "Your dragon's presence is causing fractures in the network." They reached a massive chamber at the heart of the structure. In the center stood what looked like a tree made of pure light, its branches reaching up to disappear in the ceiling above. "The master control," Hiram breathed. "It's beautiful." But as they approached, King Min materialized between them and the light tree. His form was brighter than any of the others, and his presence felt like standing next to a small sun. "I cannot allow this," he said. "The transformation has brought peace to millions. Would you destroy that for the sake of chaos?" "I would save humanity," Nara replied. "Humanity was dying. We gave it eternal life. You gave it eternal slavery." Kyungmin's form pulsed with angry light. "You don't understand. The old human form was limited by biology, by emotion, by the need to compete for survival. We have transcended all of that, and lost everything that made life worth living." Beak stepped forward. His dragon eyes locked on Kyungmin. The great beast's presence seemed to disrupt the perfect harmony of the chamber. Cracks appeared in the walls, and the light tree flickered. "Your dragon is disrupting the network," Kyungmin said. "The collective is experiencing chaos for the first time since the transformation. Some of our people are beginning to question their purpose." "Good," Nara said. "No, you don't understand. If the network fails completely, all the transformed beings will die. The collective consciousness is what keeps their new forms stable." Hiram was already at the base of the light tree, her hands dancing over controls that seemed to respond to her thoughts. "I can modify the program," she said. "But I need time." "Time you don't have," said a new voice. Nara turned to see her grandmother entering the chamber, followed by dozens of other transformed beings. But something was different about them. Their lights flickered erratically, and their movements seemed less coordinated. "Grandmother?" "I remember you," the transformed being said, and for the first time her voice sounded uncertain. "I remember holding you when you were small. I remember singing to you when you had nightmares." "Those are just memories," Kyungmin said sharply. "Echoes of what we used to be." "No," Nara's grandmother said. "They're what we still are, underneath all this light and perfection." More transformed beings entered the chamber. Some supported Kyungmin, their forms bright and stable. Others flickered like candles in the wind, their programming breaking down as they remembered their humanity. "The network is failing," Miran said urgently. "Hiram, whatever you're going to do, do it now." "Almost got it," Hiram said through gritted teeth. "The original program has safeguards, but I think I can work around them." Kyungmin raised his hand, and light began to pour from his fingers. "I won't let you destroy everything we've built." "But—" Before he could strike, Beak leaped between them. The dragon's roar filled the chamber, and his flames met Kyungmin's light in an explosion of color and heat. "Now!" Hiram shouted. She pressed her hands against the base of the light tree, and her consciousness seemed to merge with the control system. The tree began to pulse with new patterns, and waves of change rippled out through the structure. "What have you done?" Kyungmin demanded. "Given people a choice," Hiram said as she collapsed, exhausted by the effort. "The real choice they should have had from the beginning." Throughout the chamber, the transformed beings began to change. Some grew more solid, more human. Others chose to remain as they were. But for the first time since the transformation began, they were choosing for themselves. The collective network that had bound them all together dissolved, replaced by the chaotic, beautiful mess of individual consciousness. Nara's grandmother looked at her hands as they slowly became flesh again. "I had forgotten," she whispered, "what it felt like to be myself." 3 months later, Nara stood on the balcony of what had once been a crystal tower. The building still glowed with soft light, but now it pulsed with an irregular rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat. Below her, the city of Seoul was transforming. Again, but this time the change was different. Some of the buildings had returned to their original concrete and steel forms. Others remained as living crystal, but now they grew in wild, unpredictable patterns. Gardens bloomed on rooftops where transformed humans worked alongside unchanged ones to grow food that fed both body and soul. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. Nara turned to see her grandmother approaching. She looked human again, but not quite the same as before. Her hair had streaks of silver light running through it, and her eyes held depths that seemed to reflect the stars. She had chosen a middle path between her old form and her transformed state. "It's messy," Nara said with a smile. "But yes, it's beautiful." Her grandmother laughed, and the sound was purely human. "Messy is good. Perfect was killing us, even if we didn't realize it at the time." They watched as a group of children played in the street below. Some were unchanged humans, others were partially transformed, and a few flickered between states as they learned to control their new abilities. They were all laughing together. "How many chose to stay transformed?" Nara asked. "About 30%, her grandmother said. "They prefer the collective consciousness and the perfect harmony. We've given them their own cities where they can live as they choose." "And Kyungmin?" "He was one of the first to choose complete reversion. He said he had missed the feeling of being unsure about his decisions. He's helping to rebuild the government now, arguing with people and making mistakes just like any human." "Leader," Nara laughed. "And the others?" "Finding their own paths. Some change back and forth depending on their mood. Others, like me, have chosen to keep some enhancements while staying fundamentally human." "Your mother has become something entirely new, neither fully human nor fully transformed." "Where is she now?" "Working with Hyerin to modify more of the chambers. They're creating new options for people who want to enhance themselves without losing their humanity. It's complicated work, but they seem to enjoy arguing about the details." Beak landed on the balcony with a soft thump. The dragon had grown, larger over the past months, and his scales now showed hints of the same silver light that ran through the transformed city. He nuzzled Nara's shoulder affectionately. "Even he's changing," her grandmother observed. "He's still the same stubborn, fire-breathing dragon he always was," Nara said, scratching behind his ears. "But now he dreams in colors he never saw before." "And what about you? Have you decided what you want to become?" Nara had been asking herself that question for months. She had been offered every form of transformation available, from partial enhancement to complete evolution. But each time she had chosen to wait. "I think I want to stay human," she said finally. "At least for now. Someone needs to remember what we were before all this happened. And someone needs to help us remember what we're becoming," her grandmother said. "The future isn't going to be easy. We have humans, partially transformed, fully transformed, and everything in between, all trying to build a world together. There will be conflicts and misunderstandings. But there will also be growth and discovery and all the beautiful chaos that comes from being alive," Nara said. A communication device on her belt beeped. She picked it up to hear the voice of Commander Park from the Moon Colony. "Nara, this is Moonbase. We're ready to begin the first exchange program. Are you prepared to receive our delegation?" She looked out over the city with its mixture of crystal spires and concrete buildings, its gardens growing at impossible places, and its people learning to be human in new ways. "We're ready, Commander. But I should warn you, Earth is not the same place you remember. Is it better or worse?" Nara thought about everything she had seen and experienced. The fear and wonder of first contact. The revelation that her mother was alive. The terror of almost losing humanity itself. The joy of watching people rediscover their capacity for choice and growth. "It's different," she said. "It's complicated and messy and uncertain. But it's also more alive than it's ever been." "Sounds like humanity to me," Commander Park said with a chuckle. "We'll see you in a week." As the communication ended, Nara felt Beak's rumble of contentment. The dragon was watching the children play below, his eyes bright with interest. Even after all the changes, he was still fascinated by the unpredictable behavior of humans. "What do you think, boy?" she asked him. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Beak spread his wings and roared, not in anger or fear, but in pure joy. The sound echoed across the city, and from every corner came answering calls. Some were human voices, some were the musical tones of the transformed, and some were new sounds that had never been heard before. It was the sound of a species that had faced extinction and chosen instead to become something greater than the sum of its parts. Not through forced evolution or perfect harmony, but through the messy, chaotic, beautiful process of conscious choice. Her grandmother put an arm around her shoulders. Your father would be proud, she said. He always believed that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt without losing its heart. He was right, Nara said. We almost lost everything trying to become perfect, but we found something better than perfection. What's that? The freedom to keep becoming. In the distance, the sun was setting over the transformed earth, but unlike the artificial perfection of the crystal cities, this sunset was gloriously unpredictable. The sky blazed with colors that changed from moment to moment, painted by the interaction of natural light and the gentle glow of the city's living buildings. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and new choices. There would be arguments and mistakes and moments of pure wonder. There would be humans learning to use their new abilities, transformed beings rediscovering their emotions, and hybrid creatures like herself, grandmother, learning to balance enhancement. With Humanity.But, it would be chaotic and complicated and absolutely perfectly human. And that was exactly as it should be. Nara climbed onto Beak's back, and together they launched into the sunset sky. Behind them, the city hummed with the sound of millions of individuals all choosing their own paths forward. It was the most beautiful sound in the universe, the sound of freedom,